I'm really, really excited to be here. I was a high school teacher for 6 years, 3 years at a high school in St. Louis, Missouri for all girls, and then 3 years at co-ed high school in Tallahassee, Florida called St. John Paul II. And so I know Miss Gordon, who some of you might remember. She was a good friend of mine, and we were colleagues. We taught together at JP2. So beautiful, beautiful person. I'm sure her spirit is here with us today. So I'm so thrilled to be here because high school teaching is kind of I just feel very comfortable in this environment. After I was a high school teacher at JP2, my superior asked me, would I be willing to start a mission with our sisters in Ireland? So I remember I was driving our provincial superior, who was like the sister in charge of our whole American province. I was driving her home for the airport, and she asked me that, and I went like almost went off the side of the road. I said, Ireland, oh my gosh. But I spent 3.5 incredible years in Waterford, Ireland. So if any of you do a study abroad program or you go to Ireland, look us up. We'll give you a cup of tea. We'll give you a scone because that's what they eat over there. And we'd love to say hi to you. So then I came back to the United States to be what we call the vocations director. So my brother likes to tell me that I am a recruiter because he has a background in the Navy. And so that's how he sees me, is that I'm the recruiter. And I say, Mike, because my brother's name is Mike, I say, I'm not the recruiter. The Holy Spirit is the recruiter. And I'm just like the one who's there to talk to young women who feel called to religious life. But you can think of me in that way. So I travel around, and I have the awesome privilege of being with you today, and I'm just really excited to be here. So I am not going to exactly talk about vocation as a religious sister, because that wouldn't be relevant to a lot of you here today. It might be irrelevant to a few of you, but to most of you, you're not thinking of, I guess you could say, not thinking right now of a religious vocation as such. I want to talk to you about something that I think is more relevant to you, and that is what are you putting at the center of your life? What is at your center? So I want to just pose 2 questions to you today. What potential difference would a relationship with God really make in your life? And is centering your life on God really going to make you happy? So we're going to be thinking about those 2 questions, but we're also going to be thinking about another question. What is at the center of your life right now? In other words, what are the things that you order your life around? Like if you think of a wheel on a bike, right? You've got all the spokes going out, but you've got the center that connects it all and makes the whole thing work. What is at the center of your life? And does it bring you true joy and happiness? So I'm going to start off with a quote. And here's this quote from a guy named Pedro Arrupe, who was the leader of the Jesuits, a religious male order, for a while. What you are in love with, what seizes your imagination, will affect everything. It will decide what will get you out of bed in the morning, what you do with your evenings, how you spend your weekends, what you read, who you know, what breaks your heart, and what amazes you and fills you with joy and gratitude. Fall in love, stay in love, it will decide everything. So Aristotle said that the human being focuses their whole life on one question: how am I going to be happy? Like, in other words, all of us here, you don't wake up in the morning and say to yourself, gosh, I can't wait to just be miserable today. I can't wait to have like a terrible day and for everything to fall apart and for people to be unkind to me. I can't wait. Like, I'm jumping out of bed for that. No. What gets us out of bed is we think of, I remember when I was actually in high school, I remember what would get me out of bed because I'd be so tired is I was thinking, when can I take a nap? Like, that would actually like get me out. Because for me, like, a little bit of happiness was like sleep. Just as simple as that. When can I get a break, So our lives are ordered around what's going to make us happy. And that quote, this quote about love, it haunts me because when I was your age, there was something I was centering my life around that I spent all my time thinking about. It helped me form all of my choices. But the last phrase here was untrue of the love that I had in my life. It says, true love, what you are in love with, will amaze you and fill you with joy and gratitude. And I'm about to get into it in a minute here as to what I was centering my life around, but it did anything but fill me with joy and gratitude. So let me back up and tell you a little bit about my story. So grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, went to a Catholic private school, had friends, played basketball, played volleyball. I was just really a social person. Then I went to high school, and I went to a public high school, and I loved basketball. So I tried out for the basketball team and couldn't believe it, but I actually made it. And really, I guess you could say, lived for basketball. Was really, just enjoying that sport. But I went to a pretty accelerated academic high school that had the IB program and the AP classes, and I was enrolled in all of that. And my grades started to just fall apart. I couldn't balance sports and education. I just personally struggled. I put all my energy into the one and then let the other fall. So after some time, I ended up switching schools. And I went to a school that had thousands of students. It was a much bigger school. But the academics weren't quite as accelerated. And I remember getting to the school, and I remember looking around and just saying, where do I fit in? Where do I belong? Because I don't know if you've experienced this, but when you switch schools in high school, that's a tough experience. You have all your friend groups that you've left, everything that you're comfortable with. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm completely lost and terrified, because what I placed at the center, what got me out of bed in the mornings, what I thought about all the time was, do I belong? In other words, for me, happiness was being popular, pleasing people, being the center of attention, always being invited to the parties, always being with the in crowd. That was my center. That was the center of my wheel that my life revolved around. And for a while, it worked for me. And this is not a bad thing, by the way, even as you're sitting here thinking of what do you put at the center? If it's sports or a person or, acquiring material possessions, these are not bad things. But I just want to share with you how things went haywire for me. Because if you let those things become too controlling in your life, they can definitely kind of make you unravel. So I'm in this new school and I'm right, who am I going to fit in with? The smart crowd is too smart for me. I can't understand what they're talking about. The sports team is too talented for me. I'll never keep up. So which crowd do I fit with? And there was a group that was just the party group. You just knew them as this is the group that goes out and has a good time on a weekend. And I could do that. I could fit in there. So I quickly affiliated myself with this group of people that, quite frankly, we lived an incredibly superficial life. And pretty much all we ever thought about was what we were going to do on the weekends. And again, not a bad thing to have a good time on a weekend, but what happened for me is the kinds of things that they were doing was not the kinds of things that I should have been doing. And the problem came that I had to lie to my parents to get what I wanted. So being with this group of people, always being where they were, that became the focus of my attention, what I had to obtain. And what happened for me is that I would go through a weekend, and then on Monday morning, I would wake up stressed out because I hadn't done any of my schoolwork. I would have a sense of emptiness and sadness, the things that I had done, sometimes I would regret, And then what hit me the most probably is that my parents, I had been lying to them for 2 years. I lied pretty much about every weekend of what I was doing and who I was going to be with. And so that emptiness of not being honest with my family, it started to eat me up. But I couldn't get out of it. I just kept going. I think of that time as this is where these centers that we put in our lives can actually make us unfree So again, I'm thinking of the chain on the bike. It's almost like we get wrapped up in the chain and like we're just unfree. And that's how I was. So thanks be to God. Number one, I say to myself, God, I was spared of a lot of possibly really terrible situations. And this is not because I'm a virtuous person. It's just because I guess there were other plans for me. But love, what I say is love broke through in a very odd way. So I had a few friends that were going on a retreat. And they said to me, you should come on this retreat. And these friends were from a different school. And I just said, well, okay, I'll go. Just something else to do. And I don't remember much from that retreat except for one activity. We had a notebook, just a notebook like this, just a high school, whatever notebook. And we were supposed to write down like a letter to God, just kind of like saying how our life was going. And so I took that exercise really seriously. And I remember sitting in this room and I had my pencil out and my paper and I started writing down everything I was doing. So it was like a confession, like a written confession, one that I would never want anyone else to see. So I wrote it all down, closed the notebook, went home from the retreat, got home. I tend to be a forgetful person and kind of messy. So I had the notebook out, threw it on the kitchen counter, just not thinking much of it. And my mom had this practice. Every week, she would look at all the stuff on the kitchen counter. Usually it was like mail and just lots of junk from kids. And I have, there's 4 of us kids. And she would put stuff into piles. This is Mike's pile. This is Kate's pile. This is Colleen's pile. This is Tessa's pile. Now take your pile upstairs and I don't want to see it again. So she was sorting through the kitchen counter one day and she found the notebook and she didn't know whose it was. So she opened the notebook to see whose it was, right? And there was no name. So she started to just read and she read and she read and she read. The last person I would have wanted to read that notebook would have been my mom. That is literally the truth. And I had no idea she read it. And about 2 weeks later, I think of this was like my mom's agony because she had to wait to figure out how to talk to me about it. I can remember the day well. She was putting away groceries. She had come home from the grocery store and I was helping her put away groceries. And she said to me, Colleen, we need to talk. And I knew that voice. My heart sunk. I don't know if you've ever gotten in trouble, but your heart kind of sinks. And I started racking my brain going, what lie did I not cover up? What does she know? Because I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but like when you're living a deceitful life, you're always having to cover yourself. So you're never at ease because you're always you're like not living in the truth. So that was my situation. And she said to me, Colleen, I found the notebook from retreat. And I was like, oh no, this is it. And here's the thing. You could be sitting here going, wow, major invasion of privacy. True, but what I will say is I'm so grateful because it set me free. And I'll explain that in a minute. So I'm sitting there, she's sitting there, she knows everything. She looks at me, she knows I've been lying to her. So instead of me getting mad about her reading my notebook, I sit and think for 2 seconds, thanks be to God, and say, you've been lying to her for 2 years, so, give a little room. But I was waiting for her to punish me. I was waiting for the lecture. I was waiting for all these things, and I was shocked at what I experienced. Does anybody want to take a guess at her reaction? She cried. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm making my mom cry. This is like terrible. And I realized like my brokenness was breaking her. And when she did that, it was like something woke up in me. Because what she said to me was, Colleen, I just don't know why you felt like you needed to change yourself to live in this way. Because when I was writing down my confessions, I forgot to tell you this part, I wrote down at the bottom, I don't want to live like this anymore, but I don't know how to stop. And so she was crying because she could sense my unfreedom, and several other things. But and she said, I don't know what your father and I haven't provided, so that, in other words, she was taking the fault on herself that I was living in this way. And something in me said, I'm tired of this. Like, I'm tired of feeling guilt every weekend, and more than every weekend. I'm tired of the guilt. I'm tired of the cover-ups. I'm tired of the people-pleasing and the emptiness and the lack of real satisfaction in my life. I'm tired of this, and I'm done. And so after that conversation with my mom, I stopped hanging out with the people I was hanging out with. Because I don't know about you, but like sometimes we need to know ourselves, and there's this quote, and it says, you know, kind of like stay away from near occasions of sin. Like if you have a propensity to drink too much, then don't maybe drink in social situations. Or like if you have a propensity to cheat off someone next to you, move yourself away from people. So like for me, I have a propensity to go with the crowd. So like I had to remove myself from the crowd. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't miss it. I did not miss my old life because it wasn't bringing me real peace or happiness. So formed new friends, then went to Florida State University, which ironically at that time was the #1 party school. So here we go. But by the time I got there, it was really interesting. All the girls in my dorm were wanting to, or many of them anyway, were like living the party life, you know, that's what you did and all this. And I was like, yeah, not attracted to it. Like been there, done that, and it's not for me. Like it doesn't bring me what it promises, you know. And so I actually, you could say I didn't get really swept up into it. And I started making friends with like people who wanted the best for me, not just the ones who were going to be like, hey, how can you help me out so we can do this weekend? Or how can you cover for me? I'll cover for you. It wasn't like that. It was like people who actually cared about me and wanted the best for me and were going to challenge me. But still, I didn't make friendship the center of that wheel, because as good as friends are and as wonderful as friends are, you know, people let us down. We let people down. We're human. You know, you can't be God for somebody else, and someone else can't be God for you. And when we do that, and it's very common to do this, it's extremely common to do this, but we quickly realize it's not, you know, I can't put my happiness, this is what I want to say, I can't put my happiness all on somebody else and expect them to make me happy. That's a tough thing to learn. But I guess you could say I've had my experiences of that too, putting other people at the center of my life. So I started to put God at the center. Like I said to myself in college, like, God, I've lived with not having you at the center and putting myself and my own pleasures at the center and popularity, and it doesn't work. So what happened for me is I started putting God at the center. I started praying and like talking to God, and I started to, a huge change came about, because instead of having my happiness out there, something I had to obtain, that next party, that next good time, that time with those people, I started to open myself up to a happiness that always is. Like it was nothing I had to obtain. It was just right there for me. And this is something I really would love to just impart to you, that the gaze of God's love is always on us. The gentle gaze, not the condemning gaze, not the I told you so or what are you doing gaze, but rather the gentle gaze of God is always upon us. And even when we sin, God's gaze of love can't be broken. Like that's how unconditional and faithful God's love is. That's how foundational his love is. And I started to let myself experience God's love. And it changed me. I stopped trying to seek approval from other people and just making choices based on popularity and status, because I started to like realize that my goodness was already there. I didn't need validation from another person. It was already there. And it started to just change my life. So how do we get to know that love? Prayer, spending time with God, reading the scriptures, going to church, serving other people, right? Getting involved in the lives of other people. So you might ask yourselves today, what difference does a relationship with God really make in my life? Do I really feel like I want to put God at the center? Only you can answer that question. But I guess what I'd also like to ask you is, when life gets out of control, will the center hold? Like the things that you put at the center of your life, the things that make you happy, are those things really going to hold when you're in a tough time? You know, so if you put at the center success and you're unsuccessful, what are you going to do? If you put at your center the love of that person, or, you know, this person chasing after you, or you being the best in their life, what are you going to do when that's not the case anymore? Or if it's wealth and you're in a time of just making things or just getting by, what are you going to do? Is your center affirming? Does it bring you deep, abiding peace that will never leave you? Or does it leave you empty when you don't have it and you feel like you're always chasing to get more? Okay? So I don't know what you place at the center, but what I can tell you is this, is that God's love is faithful. And here's the ironic part, like God is the center of all of our lives, because like we wouldn't have souls without God, right? Like our parents help us to be created, but our parents don't create our souls. You know, that's God. That's God's life breath in us. So in one sense, God's the center of your life, whether we realize it or not. But God doesn't want to stop there. He wants a relationship with us. So it's on us to say, do I want to make you the point by which I make all other decisions in my life, you know? And what I would just say is that hopefully you might, I've made that choice, or I'm trying to make that choice, but every single day I have to start again. It's not easy for me. This is not easy for me. I have to continually examine myself and say, did I make God the center today? And lots of days it's like, no. I made anger the center. I made control the center. I made pleasure-seeking the center. But thanks be to God for His mercy, we can try again. So the last thing that I would like to say before I show you this little video is also, when you make God the center, you are like, how do I say this? You are able to give that center to others. Like, in other words, you become this like generating source of love and happiness for other people, by which they can then want to make God their center. So I'm going to show you this video, no matter what your vocation is, whether you're married, single, religious life, priesthood, you can bring God's love to other people. So I'm going to show you this video. It's called I Am a Mission. And you're going to see how the Apostles of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which is our congregation, lives out making God the center, and how that attracts other people to do the same. So I invite you to watch this video, then we'll have time for questions and answers, okay? Once you know you're loved by God, you just want everyone to be open to that. You just want to share that with other people. So when you fall in love with something, it's something good, you want to share it. Like I think of people who maybe have a girlfriend or boyfriend and they like want to share this person with their family, or when they're getting ready to get married, like they can't wait to introduce them or whatnot. Like, or when you accomplish something, you want to tell people about it. So when you make God the center, you automatically become someone who just wants to give that to other people. So it's generative and it brings life. So what are your questions? You can ask me anything. I've been asked many, many questions. And it can be from the most, lofty. It could be the most lofty question, or it could be the most basic. Like, do you swim in a pool? Yes, we do. We do swim. So anyway. So you feel free to ask anything. Or if you want to ask more questions about high school or friendships or whatnot, or if there's something that was unclear in my story, feel free. Right. So do you know the 3 vows sisters take? Yes. So what are they?
Poverty, chastity, and obedience.
You got it. Wow, that's impressive. So I didn't know that, by the way, when I was your age. I didn't know it. So we have this vow of poverty. We're not destitute. So we don't live lives of destitution. We don't take the vow that way. But what we say is we order our lives in such a way that we say, do I really need this? Do I really need this? So, you can take a look at my outfit. I have 6 of these. So I have 6 pieces of clothing in my closet. Like, that's it. And I've had them for 15 years. So, like, they last, by the way. This is good material. So my vow fits into that way. But I have some kind of like rather expensive shoes because I walk and I run. And so I want to take care of like my feet and my legs and all this. So I spend money on shoes. But where do I get the money from? Well, each local house, so religious life is a very organized entity. And so each house has like a budget. And, I guess you could say we have credit cards. But the money that I make for what I do, the money does not come straight to me. It goes to our house. And so we all have, this money that we can use. However, we ask for permission when we buy things. So if I need a new pair of shoes, my superior is not going to say, no, you can't get a new pair of shoes. But I, out of like respect and out of transparency, I ask, like, I need a new pair of shoes. I was going to go get them. Is that okay? So we do that. If I was getting new shoes every month, that would be problematic because I probably wouldn't be lining up. I wouldn't be living true to the vow of poverty. Does that make sense? So is that an answer to the question of money? Or do you have other questions about money?
But gift cards are okay?
Yeah, it's confusing, right? So we tend to like turn our gift cards in. So if one of you gave me a gift card today to Dunkin' Donuts, which I wouldn't mind. No, I'm teasing you. But I would like take it home and like give it to the sisters. And then we'd have like a common place where when we wanted to do something fun or go out, we'd like go to the gift cards, take it out. So we try to put all of our, and it says it in Scripture, it says it at the Acts of the Apostles, they put all of their possessions, that early Christian community, at the hands of the community. So we try to do the same. So like, I'm not racking up 25 gift cards and the other sister I live with has none and I'm living the good life and poor thing, she's got nothing. So we share our goods, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Share your groceries too.
We share our groceries too. And we take turns grocery shopping and cooking and all this. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So it's kind of like family in that sense. It's kind of like family. Yeah. Any other questions?
Another question they had, they don't remember. What happens if you don't get along with the other sisters?
Wow. That never happens. Yeah, right. We're human, right? We're human. So we're living with strangers, really. You live in a local community and you might not know the sister you're living with at all. And then all of a sudden you're living together, you're sharing everything, you're around each other all the time. So you can imagine what that's like. It's tough. Without the grace of God, it would not work. In fact, if we didn't put God at the center, it would never work. So when you're with someone that you don't get along with, I tell you what, it really shapes the virtue of love in your heart. Like, how easy is it for you to just love somebody who you get along with? In fact, it says in the scriptures, don't just love people that you like, love your enemies. Love your enemies. So love people who are difficult for you to love, and then you'll know how well you're actually loving. Are you willing to love people you don't like or that you don't get along with? So I think that when I live with someone that I have a hard time living with, it actually makes me a much more virtuous person. I have to ask for a lot more forgiveness, making mistakes, saying wrong things, saying things I wish I could take back. But it allows me to be a better Christian. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It's not family. It's not friends. We always say it's something else. So community is something else. But the awesome thing is like we're united by this mission to make God's love known, and that is so cool. So like when I get to the dinner table and I get to hear about that sister's day and that sister's day and that sister's day, I'm like floored at what we're doing to make God's love known. We're in prison ministry, we work with immigrants, we're in schools, we are in healthcare, we're missionaries. So like there's a lot of diversity in our work. Yeah.
How many people do you live with?
Right now I live with 2 other sisters, so I'm in a community of 3, and I live in Connecticut.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very far away. It's very cold. Yeah. Yeah.
For the grill, how often are you able to see your family?
Yeah, so thanks be to God, we go home every year. So we have like a home visit time of about 2 weeks. So I just saw my family because I went over to Jacksonville first, then came over here. So I just saw them for 5 days. So, and it's funny, like all of you, if, you know, some of you are going to be called to marriage and move away from your family, and it's going to be hard to spend time. I think religious life is really regulates home visits and stuff like that. So I think we actually, I'm pretty regular with visiting my family. And then they can come visit us when they want. So it's not like family, you know, you're separated from family and then you can never see them again. Yeah. Well, if anything, oh yes?
Do you guys have like a pet?
Oh, that's a good question. Some convents have dogs. Some convents have dogs. We don't in our little local convent, but yeah. But yeah, pets are allowed. Yeah.
They also asked the sisters could drink. You did ask that.
Okay.
And priests once, you did ask that as well.
Okay. Yes, sisters can drink, but I guess you could say you just have to know yourself, all in moderation. All in moderation. But yeah. Okay. Well, I have some. Your teacher was so great and gracious to print out these questions. So there are 4 questions on this sheet of paper. Thank you. And after the papers are passed out, you're going to have like somewhere between 5 and 8 minutes to just answer these questions for yourself, just all about what you place at the center of your life. And don't worry about the reflection above it. You don't have to worry about that right now, but just take time with these questions. And if you could do this independently, that would be great. So just spend this time honestly in conversation with God, with yourself, just trying to dive into this a little bit more about what you place at the center.